Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is part 3 of the 3-part series Findings Fountains, and in this one I'm going to show you how I do the water effect in the fountains that gives it the flowing water look. It's a technique that I don't know if anyone's seen before, it's been done before, but it's something I kind of came up with that worked for me and I wanted to share with everyone. So if you have any questions with how a particular part of the steps work, down below ask the questions. I will do my best to answer them for you. As always, thank you so much for watching and for your support. I hope you enjoy this.
To get started with this last part of the series, the first thing you want to do is take a hot glue gun and fill in the well areas of your fountains with a layer of hot glue. Once that's cool, you're going to move on to a low temp hot glue gun, and it is important to use a low temp glue gun on this particular part. And you're going to start adding the water effects of the water flowing up and out of the second tier into the first tier. To do that, you want to first put in some strips of hot glue where it lips inside the second tier, up and over, and down its side. Let those cool completely, because what that does is allow you to start building more hot glue on top of what's already there, so it gets the cascading effect down into the second tier. And this video is going to show you how I went about doing that. So you start at the curved part, take the hot glue, sort of guide it down to drop into the second level, and then you're going to bring it up and back to your starting tier. And that starts giving you the water cascading out of the top part of the fountain down into the bottom. Once you have your layering of that done and you have it to the look that you want it to have, I actually did it twice just to give it a thicker flow, what you're going to do is move on to using a hot glue gun with a higher temp to it, because you're going to need to fill in the top tier of the fountain with a little bit more of the hot glue, because as you can see there, it's not quite full enough. So taking my higher temp glue gun, which is that big blue guy, I just start filling in that upper part where you see there's some gapping happening and some more space, because you want that to act as water is flowing up, out, and over into the bottom. So you start filling it up, and I did find that by keeping the nozzle closer, if not in the hot glue itself, it cuts down on the bubbling or things that might crop up when doing this technique with making a water-like effect. So you're going to fill up the whole remaining space in the well, and then you can actually go back around with just the nozzle. You're not squeezing out hot glue, but you can use it to smooth out the surface at the top of the tier, just to give it more of an even flow look to the water coming out of the top and going into the bottom. So that's how I got that level done for the town fountain. And again, you want to make sure you let everything cool. Now, this is a new technique that I came up with for myself. It may be something someone else has done, but what you're going to want is some fishing line, because that's going to act as sort of a scaffolding for you. But you have to use your low temp glue gun for this particular step. The higher temp ones will melt the fishing line right away. Another thing that's important to keep in mind is do not touch your nozzle at all to the fishing line if you can. So I've already started putting a few pieces of the fishing line in, and I'm going to show you how it sort of works with getting this done. So you take a little bit of hot glue, and at least in the trumpet-like flowers that I had, I put a dollop of the hot glue in, and then you're going to take the fishing line and feed it into the hot glue. And you want to make sure it secures itself and has some time to set. It doesn't take too long for that to happen. And then you're going to take the bamboo skewer, and you want to make sure you're using the tip end of this. It makes it a little bit easier. And you use that to guide it down to where you essentially want your water to fall. So I take the fishing line, I guide it down, and then using the point of the skewer, I just sort of put in a little notch into the first layer of the hot glue. And then what you'll do is you'll put a dollop down on top of that mark that you just made with the point. You don't need a lot, just a little bit. You're trying to catch that fishing line. You don't want it to be too big or too hot of amount of glue, otherwise the fishing line will melt. And then just use the tip of the skewer to get it into the glue and hold it in place. I found that rolling it just a little bit helps it from getting the skewer stuck, but also make sure that the line doesn't get too hot. And then you'll take a pair of scissors and just nip off that little stray bit of fishing line. And that's how I started getting the scaffolding going to make the water flowing out of the trumpet shape at the top of the fountain. And then the next step is you take the low temp glue gun again, and kind of like before, you're going to use that fishing line to build up on it. But like I said, don't get the tip against the fishing line. You want the glue itself to be the first thing to touch the fishing line, because then it starts acting as a barrier. You also don't want to make it too thick, because that has the potential to melt the line as well. Just keep gliding your glue gun down the length of the fishing line, and it will, by nature, thanks to gravity, work with itself on that matter. So the first round of doing this, it may not look exactly as you had hoped, but I found that by doing 2 rounds of it, I got the flow look that I wanted and the thickness that I wanted for the particular jets of water coming out of the top of the fountain. So again, if you take a look, it's making sure that the nozzle isn't touching that fishing line at all, but rather the hot glue is, and then just work your way down the line. Let gravity help you with that hot glue to guide it down and bring it down to the base where you have that initial layer of hot glue that was already done. And yes, there's going to be a lot of webbing and strings that you're going to want to clean off at the end, but that's honestly best to do at the very end as well. So there you go. Now you see it's starting to build on itself, and it's looking more like water coming out of the top of the fountain and going down. And then I did a similar concept with the jets that were coming out of the shells. And once again, once everything was set and ready, I went back with the higher temp glue gun and worked the glue around the base. I did put it around where the shells were and the jets of water coming out of them, just to give it more of a look that it was there and secure. So as you can see, here are the finished products of the fountains. And again, the fishing line just worked really well to give it the water-like effect without having something show inside of the hot glue. And it let me not have to worry about painting the glue to make it look more water-like. I liked the way this effect worked out, where it's just clear and flowing and moving from one section to the next. And there's the town one that's all done, and this one's the piazza one that's all done. And with the shells, I used the fishing line as well, and it's just one of those techniques that sort of was an aha moment for me, and I really like the way it shaped up when all was said and done, and hopefully it's something you can put to use and something you can find other uses for besides just doing a fountain effect. But that's how they all worked out, and then I have a couple still photos so you can take a look for the details. There we have the villa, there's the town, and there's the piazza. All done from start to finish. There you go. So I hope you've learned something new. If not, hopefully you've learned something that you can put back to use. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, enjoy the process.
This is showing you how I add the water detail to the fountains that I made up. The wind is not my friend.